What's great news for our student athletes, for our staff, for our head coaches, is at the highest levels at this university, there's complete acceptance and support that the student athlete experience in Notre Dame Athletics are part of the DNA of Notre Dame.
From the campus of Our Lady's University, this is For Good, Stories from Notre Dame, a behind-the-scenes glimpse into life under the Golden Dome and the powerful stories that drive Notre Dame to become a force for good in the world. Hello and welcome to For Good, Stories from Notre Dame. Today we're live from the legendary Chiavarelli Lounge, which is adjacent to the Notre Dame football locker room. The Chiavarelli Lounge serves as a gathering place for past, present, and future Notre Dame student athletes. We're thrilled to welcome back Pete Bevacqua, the James E. Rohr Director of Athletics at the University of Notre Dame. Pete, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us, and we've got a lot to talk about. But let's begin with what's on everybody's mind. You've been in the job less than a year, and you've already had this historic run with the football team. Somebody told me the football season this year was 28 weeks long, more than half the year. And we're one of two teams to play 16 games. And tell us a little bit about how you feel about this historic season, about both what happened on the field and off.
Well, thanks, Lou. And it's great to be here with you again. As we were joking, we were at the Warren Golf Course last time. It was much warmer. So it's nice to be here inside the Chiavarelli Lounge. Amazing season. And just to think back to last summer, seeing the team come together, the unbelievable job Marcus Freeman did with his staff. And, you think about so many points of the season, that first road trip down to Texas A&M. Yeah. An unbelievable atmosphere, a great win. As I've said to everybody, so impressed with the win, but the way we were treated by Texas A&M and their fan base was just one of the great experiences I've ever had. And then, no secret, followed that up with such a tough loss to NIU. Yeah. And, of the many impressive things that happened over the course of the season, to see the way Coach Freeman and the team rebounded from that.
Yeah, he could have lost the team after that
but
game.
Instead, just starting immediately after that game, just putting things in perspective, using it as motivation. Every single week, he would remind the team what happened, and we don't want to feel that feeling again. Yeah. And, people talk about this being the first year of the expanded playoffs, and we had 4 playoff games. But as I always like to say, we really had 13 playoff games because every game after that NIU game, starting with Purdue, felt like we had to win it if we wanted to reach our goal of making the playoffs and then obviously advancing. But you think about the great season, I think a memory that we'll all share forever is hosting that first playoff game ever on a college campus here, right here at Notre Dame Stadium. That wonderful Friday night after the snowstorm of Thursday into Friday, all of our student body being here with us, that celebration. It was just a perfect atmosphere in Notre Dame Stadium. And then, of course, we go down to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and the way the university came together and managed such a difficult week with the terrorist incident that happened in New Orleans right before the game, causing the postponement of the game. The university came together, the people of New Orleans, the local law enforcement, just everybody managing through a terribly difficult tragedy. And then, of course, Marcus being able to once again motivate the team to have that amazing win over Georgia. And then, of course, the great game against Penn State. And sure, you want to win the national championship. We were right there. Ohio State, a tremendously talented team.
But also the resiliency in that game of our team being down,
31 to
7, coming back and making it a game in the final minutes really showed a lot about the character of the team.
Yeah, the culture of the team, the character of the team, the way that team was so they were such a close-knit group, really looking out for one another and kind of building off of the support they had here at Notre Dame. It was wonderful. And what's great about it, Lou, this isn't a one and done.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to play in the national championship game every year? Unfortunately, no, that's not the case. That's nearly impossible. But we're going to keep knocking on the door.
But you've been really clear in saying, right from the get-go, you've been at this job 11 months, we have to win a national championship in football.
We have to win a national championship in football.
Yeah.
It's a key goal. It's a priority of the football program, of the athletic department of the university, and we will.
Yeah.
Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be the year after? But, we're going to keep knocking on that door. And we have the pieces in place.
Yeah.
We have the absolute best coach for Notre Dame and Coach Freeman, what he does on the field, what he does off the field. We have these amazing facilities like the one we're in right now.
Yeah.
We have, I believe, the best indoor practice facility in the country. As you know so well, we're constructing the Shields Family Hall, which I think is going to be state-of-the-art model for a football operations facility.
Yeah.
We have the expanded playoffs as being independent. When it's 4 teams, that's incredibly difficult.
Right.
But now that it's a 12-team playoff, we can survive a loss like we did against NIU and still make the playoffs and get to the championship game.
Yeah.
We have the wonderful 3-decade-plus relationship with NBC.
Right.
We have some of the best student athletes in the country coming here to play for Coach Freeman and for Notre Dame. So I feel very bullish about the program.
This really is a differentiator from Notre Dame, increasingly in the world where education isn't taken as seriously with many of these programs. How does that make what we're doing more challenging and also as more of a strength in recruiting a different type of student?
It's a great question. It's a timely question. Whenever I talk to our president, Father Bob Dowd, I always start with the key fundamental tenet of what we're trying to do at Notre Dame in the athletic department and as a university is to maintain a legitimate, authentic student-athlete experience.
Yeah.
And I had a high school women's basketball recruit in my office right before the Christmas break. And this was a top 5 recruit in the country, could play anywhere and had amazing grades. And I said to her, hey, listen, with your basketball talent, you could go to any major basketball program in the country. With your grades, you could go to the best universities in the country. I said, but I firmly believe we're the best 1-2 punch. If you want to be a student athlete, if you want to have every resource imaginable at your fingertips to succeed and to grow athletically, the best coaches, facilities, sports science, nutrition, strength and conditioning, we're top of the pyramid.
Right.
But we're going to do the same thing academically. We're going to make sure you have all the resources and academic advisors to make sure that you can keep up as a student here at Notre Dame, because it's terribly difficult to be a student at Notre Dame with as academically rigorous as Notre Dame is. It's even more difficult when you're a student athlete because of the time crunch.
Yeah.
And that is more and more difficult to maintain across the country. And, that is our fundamental goal. And I always tell Father Bob or other leaders on campus that I'll feel as though we've failed if you enter onto this campus 2, 5, 10 years from now and you feel like you've entered onto a segregated campus. And by that, I mean, hey, the students are over there, the athletes are over there. They might as well be in 2 different countries.
Right.
That's not Notre Dame.
And that's more the norm.
That's definitely more major universities with major athletic programs. That is becoming more and more common.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, to go back to Coach Freeman, he says it well, when student athletes come here, regardless of which of the 26 programs they're going to participate in, they're choosing hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Yeah. But the upside and what you get is unbelievable. And I tell any of our student athletes or any recruits, hey, whether your sports career ends when you're 18 or 21 or you play professionally until you're 40, it's going to end. It ends for everybody, even the best of the best.
Yeah.
And it's that Notre Dame degree, the Notre Dame education, the relationships you formed while you're here, like the ones you formed, like the ones I formed, that are going to serve you well for the rest of your life. That's the magic of Notre Dame. And I think that the value of the student athlete experience here is more valuable than it's ever been, is quite unique.
Yeah.
And I think is going to be a bigger differentiator for us than it's ever been before going forward.
Let's talk a little bit about the changing landscape. When you came in less than a year ago, it's been nothing but a set of sea changes to intercollegiate sport. And we think about name, image, and likeness. We think about the transfer portal. We think about the precarious and shifting nature of the financial model to support all of this. Give us an update. And where do things stand right now? How are we at Notre Dame trying to confront these challenges? And why do you find hope on the horizon?
Well, I find hope because our North Star is that student-athlete experience. There's no moving off of that. So we're guided by that, and we start every conversation with that acknowledgement, and we end every conversation with that acknowledgement. Whether I'm talking to our team, our staff, a head coach, talking to you, talking to Father Bob, that's our constant. And it is a time of unprecedented change. And, you know, as I'd like to say to our team, I think strong entities get stronger in times of change, in times of chaos. If you look back to the financial downturn of 2008 and 2009, it were the strong entities, the strong organizations that kept their foot on the gas. That kept moving forward and succeeding. If you think back to the COVID years, same situation. I think a brilliant example of that is Notre Dame. And you know, you lived through that here as a part of the Notre Dame team. I saw it from a distance, but the decisions that were made, the leadership of Father John at the time to kind of say, no, we're back in action. These our students are back in class, back on campus. Notre Dame led. And I think went into COVID with a head of steam and came out of COVID with even more of a head of steam. And my hope, my expectation is the same with our athletic department and our student athletes and our athletic programs.
Another way of saying this is that with every crisis comes unprecedented opportunity.
Yeah, don't waste a good crisis.
That's right.
And that's important. And I think you can become overwhelmed by the amount of change, or you can see it as fascinating. And the ability to grow and adapt. And that's how we're viewing it. And if you think about NIL, name, image, and likeness, that's something that's existed now for several years. And Notre Dame, to its credit, was an early proponent of student athletes being fairly compensated. And we had the creation of this world of collectives, and you know, collectives being largely unregulated around the country. And now,
outside of the university,
and outside purposely and necessarily outside of the university. And we had an amazing collective and fund. And now we've moved toward a new collective, Rally. And Rally is the collective that's creating and looking for and identifying name, image, and likeness opportunities for our student athletes. But what we're on the cusp of, Lou, is a pretty dramatic change in a series of cases, antitrust cases against the NCAA, that now is kind of collectively being referred to in the vernacular as the House settlement. And we've been preparing for this for over the course of the last year. The House settlement is due to be decided upon formally on April 7th.
By the courts?
By the courts, by Judge Wilkin, who's a district court judge. And you never know, but the anticipation and what most people believe is that it will be approved. And should it be approved, there will be a fundamental change that now universities and the Power Four conferences, so think Big 12, Big 10, SEC, ACC, and for our purposes, the ACC for 24 of our 26 programs. But for the first time ever, universities will be able to directly compensate a segment of their student athletes up to a defined cap amount.
And this came about, the House settlement believed that there should be a revenue share for student athletes. That's where it's coming from?
That's correct. And it was a heavily negotiated agreement between the Power Four conferences and the NCAA on one side, and attorneys that were representing a class of student athletes, both former, present, and future.
And the percent they came up with was 22%
22% of basically a somewhat inaccurate math, if you will, but basically looked at the revenue of the athletic departments of the Power Four conferences, which vary greatly, averaged that out to a number and basically said, okay, let's take 22% of that number as a revenue share, if you will.
Okay.
And that'll be the starting cap number that universities within those Power Four conferences and other universities that opt in can distribute through direct compensation to a segment of their student athletes for name, image, and likeness rights. They've capped it. The cap will start again, should this be approved, it would go into effect for next academic year. And the cap will start at $20,500,000.
Okay.
And as you know, because you and your team have been unbelievable partners in this, we're looking for ways to now kind of deal with the new economics of this brave new world, and we will. We're going to be aggressive. Notre Dame, like most other major universities with major athletic departments in those Power Four conferences, will hit the cap, deploy those dollars in a strategic way to programs, athletic programs, and no surprise, primarily to football, men's and women's basketball, some of our largest revenue generating programs. And that's all should the House settlement get approved.
Right.
There'll still be a world of collectives. There'll still be an unbelievable essential need for Rally, which is the Notre Dame collective.
But the big sea change there is those gifts, are really now contributions to Rally, will no longer be tax deductible. They won't be considered gifts or donations, but rather sponsorships for student athletes for representing their brands or whatever it might be. Is that correct?
So in large part, there's two key many components of the House settlement. We could talk about it for hours, but there's going to be two key clearinghouses, if you will. The first clearinghouse will be universities are going to have to self-report how they're spending their cap money to make sure that no university goes above that $20.5 million number. Now, you don't have to spend anything, but you can't spend more than the $20.5 million in support of your student athletes. The other clearinghouse, which is vitally important, is any NIL deal now in excess of $600 has to be submitted to a clearinghouse that's going to be run by Deloitte. So a big, very, obviously great reputation company that will be making sure that these are no longer booster payments, things of that nature,
really
totally arbitrary,
value.
But based on fair market value. The hope, the expectation, the necessity that, universities will attempt to bear the new economics of the cap. But the system really can't survive if you have to raise $20.5 million at the university level, plus collectives, unregulated, the Wild West world of collectives going out there raising that type of number in addition. The system starts to wear down and implode. So having just been at a series of meetings with a lot of my colleagues, all the thought right now is, what's going to be the regulation structure? What are going to be the repercussions? Making sure that this is truly monitored and governed. And as you know from the many conversations we've had, that's why we all believe, whether you're Notre Dame or another one of these major universities with major athletic programs, we also need the help and the participation and cooperation of Congress to make sure that this takes hold, because fundamentally, we want our student athletes to be fairly compensated, but we want to maintain that student athlete experience. We want to maintain that connection with what it means to come to a university like Notre Dame and earn your degree. And we want to maintain everything that's special about college sports.
So where do you come up with, say this goes into effect next year, where do you come up with the $20.5 million?
I'm going to look to you, actually.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to be looking to you as well.
We have to be more disciplined than ever.
And,
countless conversations I've had with Father Bob and others at the university level. Where do we tighten our belts? What are our true priorities? How are we, more conscious of where we're spending than ever before?
But would it be fair to say that we're not going to be going out and looking for people to make direct contributions to NIL since they're not tax deductible. What we'll try to do is get more expendable money, unrestricted, especially into the Rockne Athletics Fund, but also to endow more grant and aids, more coaching positions, more programs. And then that will allow us to take some of the corporate money that you have and direct that.
Correct, because our goal, our fundamental goal is, as I said, and I'll repeat myself, maintain that student athlete experience, but for all 26 of our programs.
Yeah.
And you think about the Rockne Fund and all the unbelievable contributors to the Rockne Fund, more important than ever. How do we continue to grow the endowment, as you said, of the scholarships? Right now we have 322.2 scholarships.
Yeah.
We have roughly 739 student athletes. How do we grow that scholarship number?
And there's also going to be roster limits, but there's no longer a cap.
So another fundamental part of the settlement, again, should it get approved, is right now, based on the program you have an NCAA regulated number of scholarships. So for our 26 programs, we have that 322.2 number.
Give an example for a particular sport.
Football, we have 119 student athletes on the team, but we're limited to 85 scholarships.
Got it.
With the House settlement, there are no more scholarship limitations. Mm-hmm. So if you had 500 student athletes on a campus, you could scholarship every single one of them, regardless of the amount of programs you had.
Yeah.
So no more scholarship limits, but there's going to be the imposition of roster limits. So football is a good example if we stick on football. We have 119 student athletes on the team. We currently have 85 scholarship limits. The new football roster number will be 105.
Okay.
So Coach Freeman will not be able to have more than 105 student athletes practice or participate in football should the House settlement get approved. So we're both simultaneously dealing with how can we add scholarships to men's sports and primarily to women's sports, because we really want to continue to invest in women's sports because we believe in it and for Title IX purposes.
Right.
But also the very tough conversations of roster limits and what that's going to mean for some of our student athletes. And I have been very vocal that even though we support the House settlement, we do believe there should be a grace period for current student athletes before these roster limits are imposed. We don't know if that's going to succeed. Reading the tea leaves, it doesn't look likely. That's something that really troubles us, troubles our coaches, troubles our staff and our team. But we're on that every single day. Yeah. So when you think about this House settlement, we're starting to plan for the economics of it. We're starting to plan for what does it mean to directly compensate a segment of our student athletes with the cap money, primarily for those larger sports like obviously football, men's and women's basketball. Right. How do we deal with a world where there are no scholarship limits, but people know Notre Dame, it's one of the great educations in the world.
Right.
It's expensive from a scholarship standpoint. Yeah. How do we have the tough conversations about roster management and yet maintain healthy cultures for all of our 26 programs? Yeah. But
some very tough choices ahead,
but it's not just that we're sitting in a vacuum. Every major university is wrestling with these same issues and trying to figure this out as strategically as possible. And again, the good news for us is we have that North Star.
Yeah.
It all starts and ends with, we want to be unbelievably successful. We want to win national championships, but we're going to maintain that student athlete experience.
Right. So Notre Dame is better. This is going to be an arduous challenge for Notre Dame to financially step up and meet all these new requirements. But we're better positioned in terms of our financial viability, management, and keeping costs down than most schools. Most schools already are subsidizing, or many, even in the ACC, these Power Four conferences, they're subsidizing their athletic programs at $20 million, $30 million, $40 million a year. How are they going to take on an additional $20 million in light of that? What do you see changing in the landscape of our competitive schools?
I think it's going to be tricky. I think it's going to be tricky for a lot of universities, a lot of major universities. I think you're right. You read about debt, you read about subsidies from the university level, some very high profile programs in recent news stories and conversations with colleagues I've had the last few days, what they're doing at the university level, what states are doing to help universities bear this burden. But I'll go back to something you said at the beginning of that question. I don't think Notre Dame's ever been stronger academically. It's never had a stronger reputation, both nationally and internationally. I think has never been more secure financially. So I agree with you on all of those. I also think one of our biggest advantages is just absolute alignment.
Yeah.
So whether you're talking to Father Bob, you and I were both at our trustee meeting last week. What's great news for our student athletes, for our staff, for our head coaches, is at the highest levels at this university, there's complete acceptance and support that the student athlete experience in Notre Dame athletics are part of the DNA of Notre Dame. That's not questioned at the highest level. And so everything kind of flows from that. Yeah. And that to me and to our student athletes, that's tremendously comforting.
Yeah.
And, we're sitting here today just a few steps away from Notre Dame Stadium. And you think about the history of Notre Dame, you think about, you go back and what helped make Notre Dame a national university 100 years ago was the football program and Newt Rockne hopping on a train and going out west to play USC. And Notre Dame football, Notre Dame sports were such a great, important part of this university. In many ways, we're a wonderful front porch.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, when you're wearing the leprechaun or the ND, whether you're walking around New York City, South Bend, Indiana, or Beijing, people know it.
Yeah.
And think, Lou, about that 1 month run in the college football playoffs. The unbelievable exposure.
Right.
Favorable press that not just the football program,
the
not
bringing
just
together with the Notre Dame family, alumni,
just
parents,
a month-long
friends.
celebration. And so, stories were written about how wonderful Coach Freeman is and the culture of the team.
Yeah.
But there were also stories about how Notre Dame is doing this and maintaining that student-athlete experience and how the Thursday before we made the trip to Atlanta, practice was only an hour because the kids had class, right? And that's part of who we are. And it was a great way to tell that story to millions and millions and millions of people, not just around this country, but around the world.
One of your amazing qualities among many is that you stay so positive, so upbeat and optimistic about the future. And so when you look at the transfer portal, I'm sure you're going to find a way to optimistically respond to this. Does it prejudice Notre Dame that it's more difficult for students to meet the academic requirements? Very good student athletes that at other institutions maybe haven't taken the core curriculum that we need or haven't performed at a level that they need to. How do you see that the transfer portal, not just for football, but for all our sports, affecting what we do going forward?
Yeah, you could see it as a disadvantage. You could also position it as an advantage. So no secret, right? It can be difficult for an undergrad transfer to come into Notre Dame for the very reasons you stated.
Yeah.
So whether Marcus Freeman was sitting here, Niele Ivey, Micah Shrewsbury, Salima Rockwell, any one of them would say, and Marcus says it so well, we have to major in high school students.
Yeah.
That's the Notre Dame experience. That helps with the culture of a team.
And it helps in the development of the student athlete.
You're not going to see these drastic turnovers where a team has a brand new identity from year to year because all of a sudden there's 40, 50, 60 strangers showing up. Notre Dame is always going to be primarily based on, hey, you came from a high school from any part of the country or the world because we have so many international student athletes. You came to Notre Dame. You became part of this campus. You made friends on your team and friends in your dorm and friends in your major.
Yeah.
And that adds to the culture of the campus. That adds to the culture of the university. But we're not going to put our head in the sand.
Right.
And we're going to be incredibly opportunistic and strategic about the transfer student athletes that we need.
Right.
And if you look at our programs, we've had great success with that.
Yeah.
Think about Riley Leonard, for an example.
Right.
You know, we had that great win against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and there were 5 to 6 transfer student athletes that had an unbelievable impact on just that game.
Right.
And student athletes that didn't just transfer in here and have an impact on the football team on the field, but had a great cultural impact, fit in with the team, became a part of the team, became a part of the larger Notre Dame community.
Yeah.
So we're going to be opportunistic, we're going to be strategic, but we're always going to major in the maturation of the high school student athlete coming into Notre Dame and leaving Notre Dame better athletically, better academically, better spiritually, and hopefully, if we do our job, a better person, a more complete person than when he or she entered here.
Okay, let me ask you something very unconventional. So look into the camera for a second, and I want you to respond to any alum, parent, friend, fan whose head is spinning right now with all this change in college athletics, worried that we're going to lose the soul of Notre Dame in this process of trying to keep up.
Don't be alarmed that your head is spinning, because most people's heads are spinning, but we're going to figure this out. And I'll go back to the fact that we're Notre Dame. We know our North Star. We know our mission. We know that we are going to maintain that student athlete experience and maintain an incredibly integrated campus, where when you're a student athlete, you're part of your team, you're part of the athletic environment here, but you're part of the Notre Dame family, part of the Notre Dame community. And I don't think there was any better proof of that, and very timely proof, than what we did on the football field this season. Overcoming adversity, sticking together, wonderful representatives of what this university is. And I would tell you that I'm always motivated and inspired by any single conversation I have with a Notre Dame student athlete. When a young man or woman comes into my office and talks to me, it's very rarely about athletics. It's about their campus experience, what Notre Dame has done for them, what they plan to do in the future, not just on the field or on the court, but in life. What Notre Dame is doing for these student athletes is working. It's going to continue to work. And I think it's going to be more important than it's ever been in terms of having student athletes come into Notre Dame and leave here as wonderful examples and ambassadors for this university. We're on top of it. We're going to do it smartly, strategically, and we're going to figure it out.
I, for one, am sold. So I'm behind you, 100%. I believe what you say, and I feel incredible confidence in your leadership. All right, a couple fun fan-like questions. Sure. I got to tell you, I don't know that I've seen, there's been some incredible women's basketball teams at Notre Dame over the years, star players left and right, but this team is about as exciting a team as I've watched over all those years. We got a chance to make an incredible run here. Your thoughts about the remainder of the season?
Well, I was talking to Niel the other day, and you have to be good, and we're good. You have to stay healthy, and knock on wood. That's important in any sport. And you're going to get lucky every once in a while. You're not going to win a national championship in any sport without a couple of times everything kind of going your way and the ball bouncing your way. But this team is so much fun.
Yeah.
And, it starts with Niel.
Yeah.
And, what a great story of somebody who came to Notre Dame, suffered 2 ACL injuries, won a national championship, played in the WNBA, coached professionally, came back as an assistant coach, positioned herself to become the head coach, and has just done a wonderful job. But you think of this backcourt, with Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles, and then Sony Citron, which is just like the steadiest player, I think, on the face of the earth. Maddie Westfeld is back and healthy. Kate Koval is doing unbelievably well as a true freshman. Chu, who's a transfer from Pittsburgh, has brought so much energy and athleticism to the team. We're just firing on all cylinders, and it's an absolute blast. And to see how well they're performing, how well they get along, I think it could be a magical season. Can't take anything for granted. There's some really good teams out there. Yep. We've played a bunch of them already, but it's just a joy.
I get nervous at the thought of just trying to bring the ball up the court as if I were playing and Hannah Hidalgo were guarding me when she gets in that zone where she is intent on stealing the ball. I don't know how you bring it up.
Her energy and just the vibe she brings to the court, Liv with her ball control and passing. Sony, who's just is, the enforcer, who's the best player on the other team, puts Sony on her and she'll do her best to shut her down.
Yeah, total team player.
They're fun to watch.
Amazing. So you made a tough decision in your very initial months with regard to the men's swimming program. It's been on pause, for this year. Mm-hmm. Amazing how the student athletes have responded. And you've got some decisions to make there. And you've had some really amazing successes with the women's program, which has continued. Give us a little update on where things stand.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. I mean, hats off to Coach Chris Lindauer and his coaching staff and the women's swimming and diving team. And quite frankly, also the men's swimming and diving team. The women have done incredibly well in the pool and outside the pool. Grade point average for the women's team last semester was over a 3.6, the highest in the history of the program. The men's team was 3.4, also the highest in the history of the program.
Jeez, I should have been a swimmer. Could have got my GPA
it's
up.
The chlorine, right?
Exactly.
The women's team just won a national award for the best grade point average and performance, kind of a dual award. And just to see how the culture of these two teams have come together, I applaud the freshmen men who have stuck with the program, the upperclassmen who've come back to the program, the leadership of the coaching staff, the work of our sports administrators. And literally, Lou, right before I walked over here, I was with Coach Lindauer and we were talking about next steps and what we hope to do and intend to do. And my expectation is that men's swimming and diving program, and particularly the suspended men's swimming program, my hope is that it's back next year and fully functional. And I'll sit with Father Bob over the course of the next few weeks. I mean, I'll make a recommendation. Ultimately, as the president of the university, it's his decision. But he and I have been in constant contact about this. It was a tough decision. It was a sad decision. But everything these teams have done and the coaching staff has done since that decision has been unbelievably impressive.
But I commend you because it was a tough love decision. Every decision that you made with regard to the program, I thought was undergirded by love and a real empathy for the student athlete, for the program, for the families involved. And it sounds like with the leadership of Coach Lindauer and that team, that they're rebounding really, really well. And so it looks like the best days may lie ahead.
Yeah, everything they've done to date from that really tough moment and tough decision has really been impressive.
So we've won 2 consecutive national championships in men's lacrosse. We're about to kick off a new season, ranked number 1. What are your thoughts about this upcoming season?
I was worried the Chiefs were going to steal our thunder, but they didn't, right? So, hey, the job Kevin Corrigan has done has just been amazing. I mean, he was the lacrosse coach when I was here, right? I mean, his career, I mean, has anybody ever had more of an impact on a program than he's had on Notre Dame lacrosse? And, I met with the 2 captains of the team last week, and this is a different team.
Yeah.
And as they were so quick to tell me, they haven't done anything yet.
Right.
It starts this week.
Right. And
it's chapter 1 and hopefully another great, season-long march to a wonderful situation. But you can't take anything for granted. It's so hard to win a national championship. It's that much harder to win 2. To win 3 would be amazing. I hope the team doesn't feel that pressure constantly. Right. I hope they can enjoy the season, the journey, each other's company, what it means to be a part of a Notre Dame program like the lacrosse program.
Yeah.
They're incredibly talented. They have as much chance or a better chance than anybody. But like I said, Lou, you got to be good. Mm-hmm. You got to stay healthy. And no matter who you are, you're going to have to get a couple of breaks here and there over the course of a long season.
That's right. Well, I couldn't tell you how bullish I feel about your leadership. Also, the coach educators that you have under you. Thank you and the team that you lead for the exemplary work that you do with our student athletes, but also the visible way in which you represent Notre Dame and all of the values of Our Lady on the Dome and that you do so well. As we always try to close these programs, we invite you to join with us wherever you're coming from. We're going to close with a prayer to Our Lady. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Take care. God bless. Go Irish. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Lou.